Welcome to the Duck Milk Prod YouTube channel. My name is Rebecca Johnson, and in this video, I'm going to stray away from my usual DCEU and Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice material to talk about something I'm really excited about, Disney's Disenchanted. It stars Amy Adams as Giselle, so it's DCEU adjacent, so I think it counts for my brand. Now, I was initially skeptical about a sequel to Enchanted because I love that film so much. I was a big fan of the story, the soundtrack, the acting. Amy Adams was nominated for a Golden Globe for it. She didn't win, but she should have. The concept, everything. I loved all of it. And I really didn't want Disney to ruin the original Enchanted with a pointless sequel that nobody asked for. But I have to admit that I have been won over enough to be intrigued with what they are doing. I think a large part of it is that the trailer was really well thought out and cut together. And that's what I want to discuss because I'm a video editor and I'm always interested in the way things are done in terms of the editing and why they're done, why the choices were made. Everything is there for a reason. And I like dissecting the things that maybe people don't pay attention to, some of the editing techniques and the choices that they make in terms of the sound design that goes into these things, because somebody's doing that. That's not just, it doesn't just happen. There's somebody doing all of the mixing and the sound design and the editing for these trailers, and it's quite a process. So I'm going to share my thoughts about what I think they are doing in the trailer and why I was so won over by this trailer, because I think it's one of the better trailers I've seen in a long time. And I'm actually very happy with this because Disney seems to just remake their animated stuff into live action films, and they're kind of not creative in that respect. And so this actually, they're making a sequel to a film that came out in 2007, but it's doing something very interesting. And so I really wanted to just get behind a microphone in front of a camera and just talk about it and see what everybody else thinks as well. So if you have any thoughts, please share them with me in the comments section, because I would be interested to hear what you think. While I talk about this trailer, I'm going to kind of go through it and dissect it a little bit. But some of the things that I want to talk about are Giselle's story and her motivation as presented in this Disenchanted trailer. And one of the things that's really interesting about her story is that she seems to become the evil stepmother. There's some Cinderella things going on here. There wasn't a lot of Cinderella in Enchanted. There was a lot of Sleeping Beauty, some Little Mermaid. There was a Cinderella reference where she leaves her her slipper, as it were, at the ball when she has to go after Nerissa, who is turned into a dragon. So there is a little bit of Cinderella, but it's not a lot. A lot of it was more Snow White. I think in the original Enchanted, a lot of Snow White and Sleeping Beauty. So this one is really leaning into the Cinderella aspect of it. And so I want to talk about that. But also, even though there is some change to Giselle, she's getting to kind of play with the evil side maybe a little bit. But the trailer is also showing that they're wanting to stay true to who Giselle is as a character. So I want to talk about that a little bit, because that was something I was very worried about, what they were going to do with her. And it's very clear in watching this trailer that they're still, Amy Adams is still nailing the character for sure. I also want to talk about fairy tales as wish fulfillment. There's a lot of wishing in this trailer, so I want to talk about that. And then one of the things in relation to the sound design I wanted to discuss were the sounds of the ticking clocks. Ticking clocks could be Cinderella references to the countdown to midnight, when everything changes back into what it was, and Cinderella's fairy tale has come to an end, or so she thinks. But I also think there's maybe a commentary about time there. That's something that I want to pay attention to when the film comes out, is if there's something about the sort of the time passing, because in the original Enchanted, Morgan is a young child, and here in Disenchanted, she looks to be maybe a teenager. I don't know exactly what age she's going to be, but there is some time that has passed from when Giselle met Robert. So there could be some of that, because it does seem to play into more of Giselle and Morgan's relationship. So that's quite a good take, and I think that's a really interesting way to go into a sequel because the first film dealt with a romance between Giselle and Robert, and here they may be playing into the mother-daughter aspect with Giselle and Morgan, and I think that's really cool. So I'm excited about that. So of course you can't tell a whole movie and review a film just based on the trailer. So I'm sure there's a lot we haven't seen. I'm sure there's a lot that's still to be revealed. So I know I can't decide for myself how I feel about the film just because of the trailer. But I think there are some things that are sort of teasing us as to what may come in the full film. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and get into the trailer and I will try to stop it when I feel like I need to in terms of talking about it. So they'll probably be stopping a lot. So we'll just go ahead and get into it. So I guess the first thing here, I didn't get very far. I got about 5 seconds in, but just to point out that this seems to start out in New York City where they were previously in Enchanted, and they're eventually going to move to the suburbs, the country, something like that. So there's going to be a little setting change in here, and I think that is important because you move away from New York City and the the rats and the pigeons bringing her things to her balcony to something very different in a smaller town, a smaller setting. So I think that's worth pointing out.
I know the change can be scary.
And I love that this pigeon brings Giselle like a half-eaten hot dog bun. Like that's a great gift to bring to her. Oh, there's a lot of like I guess those are roaches. Roaches, rats. There's some big rats too. I know there's some big ones in New York City, which is a little terrifying. I don't know what this mound is. I don't know if that's an anthill or some sort of just dirt. I don't know what that is.
But it can also be exciting.
If I learned anything.
But I like that that's an indication that Giselle is the same Giselle that we met in 2007's Enchanted. So that makes me very happy. There's also this location that is, if I'm correct, a very similar location from the 2007 Enchanted film. Especially, I can think of when Giselle thinks she's gonna go away and she's gonna stick with Edward, and this is after like she's made these relationships with Robert and Morgan, and she has to say goodbye to little Morgan, and I think that's in this same location. So they're really throwing it back, throwing it back about what is that, 15 years? So yeah, throwing it back.
From meeting Princess on a billboard is that sometimes you just have to take a leap.
Let's start our.
And I guess I passed it. But Giselle is wearing like I don't know. I guess it's a rose, looks like. So roses all over her her dress there. So I think that's very fitting for Giselle.
Let's start our new life.
So it looks like they're moving from New York City into this town called Monroeville. In Alabama, there's a town called Monroeville. It's not called Monroeville. I guess some people say maybe Monroeville. It's very famous for being where To Kill a Mockingbird was written and sort of based off of. So I don't think that they're going to be saying Monroeville. Maybe they will. I'd be curious if they use the Alabama pronunciation, but it's probably called Monroeville. And I think it's interesting that it says your fairy tale starts here because as we see later on in the trailer, this is partially why I think the trailer is so brilliant is that, and maybe this is also just speaking on a greater scale for the cleverness of the film itself is that Giselle wants to start a new life and have a fairy tale. She's going into this place where it promises her fairy tale is going to start here. We see later on in the trailer that she tries to create her own fairy tale in this place and in this new life. And so I think that's really very, very clever. It's a very simple thing, actually, but to have that planted there, which seems like I have a feeling this is the beginning of the film where they're starting their new life and going to this new place. And that's kind of the beginning of the film that we'll see later on in the trailer where she has legit created a fairy tale where everybody's in fairy tale clothing. that house is turned into a fairy tale castle, and so she has literally created her own fairy tale. So I like the hint of what is to come there. And I think it's interesting. There's a mom and a dad and a child, um, which is sort of evocative of, I guess, Robert, Giselle, and Morgan. But as we see in a little bit, there is a new addition to the family, a little baby. So I guess we'll learn more about who that is.
Pretty soon, this whole place will feel like home, you'll see. It's all part of the adventure.
That's not an adventure, that's a landfill.
A land filled with adventure.
That was the moment, that joke, a land filled with adventure. First of all, it's a great joke. But also it's great because it's another example to me that both Disney and Amy Adams are still really understanding who this character is. Giselle is a is one of my favorite Disney princesses because she is a Disney princess, an animated Disney princess who has come into the real world and is living in the real world. And so it's still, even this many years later, Morgan has now grown up. She's a teenager, I'm guessing, and Giselle is still the kind of wide-eyed, optimistic fairy tale character. Even living so long in the real world has not shaken that out of her, and I really love that. And she's, she's making a positive statement about the disaster that they walked into in this house. And so I think the way she has spun this is very good and very Giselle. Also, while I'm here, I think the clothing they have Morgan in is very interesting. A lot of kind of abstract things on the t-shirt, some interesting things going on the jacket. I don't know what all that stuff means, but it's definitely a big contrast to Giselle's pink dress with the roses on it. Morgan's looking like she's going through a sort of goth, maybe not goth, but more like a punk rock vibe as a teenager, showing maybe she's gotten a little rebellious, as maybe all of us did in our teenage years. But I think the contrast, if the story, as I anticipate it will be, is about Giselle and Morgan's relationship, I think the clothing here, the wardrobe here, is showing a contrast between the two characters and how they're a little bit far apart maybe at the beginning of this film. So I think that's really kind of an interesting choice.
Adventure.
Robert! Congratulations!
Oh, it's what they call a fixer-upper.
Yes, once your peasants have dug out the moat and added a turret and a balcony from which you can sing. I see it now.
Okay.
And I love James Marsden in this. I always get James Marsden and James Marsters a little confused. This is James Marsden. I love that he's still Prince Edward. I guess is he King Edward now? But I love that he's still just totally embodying the part, and just really embracing that sort of Disney Prince vibe that he does so well. And while I've been talking about the wardrobe, I think it's interesting that this baby, whoever this is, I guess this is Robert and Giselle's a new addition, a new baby to the family, which I might imagine that Morgan may be having an issue with. Maybe. I'm assuming that a teenage girl is having maybe problems of having a new baby sister, maybe. I don't quite know yet, but maybe that's part of some issues that Giselle and Morgan are having. I don't know. I'm just guessing from the trailer. I have no idea. But it's interesting to me that the baby has more of a Giselle vibe in the clothing choice. Maybe I'm reading into all this. I don't know. But the baby has kind of a yellow pastel color with, I don't know what those are. I don't know if those are flowers or something, but to me that says Giselle and the baby, all good, very alike. And maybe
Yes,
Morgan's wardrobe choice, where she's wearing a black t-shirt. Maybe she's going through this teenage phase, and that's very much a contrast to Giselle. I don't think Giselle would ever wear anything in black. So that's interesting to me. I'm going to pay attention to that.
And a balcony from which you can sing. I see it now.
Okay.
Melvina, Monroe.
Now, I'm excited about Maya Rudolph because I love Maya Rudolph. She makes me laugh a lot. So I'm curious to see how she's going to play into this evil. I assume she's the evil character in the film, the villainess of the film. So I think that's a good choice. I also want to point out here there's a family portrait here in this trailer. So you get Giselle, unnamed baby as of yet, and Morgan and Robert. So I think it's cool that they have the family of four here in the shot. So they're at least joined together in this moment, I guess, when they meet the evil character Maya Rudolph is playing.
Told you this house, but I deal in slightly more upscale.
Now, what I think is also cool about this is that they have recruited all of these really great comedic actors. So I'm really interested in the I don't guess they show Yvette Nicole Brown, but it looks like there are two assistants to this Maya Rudolph character, and I'm guessing that that's sort of evoking Cinderella's wicked stepmother and her wicked stepsisters. That's what I'm guessing that's sort of playing off of. And if so, I think it's a good choice.
Upscale homes.
In Andalasia, the hardest part of life is finding your happily ever after. This world's very different.
So this is why I think there's something happening with Morgan and Giselle's relationship, because it looks like maybe they've gotten into a fight here. I don't know where they are. There's a bunch of people around, but it looks like they've
This world's very
gotten into a fight because Morgan storms off and Giselle is crying. You can see Amy Adams is such a good actress. Oh my gosh, she's like legit crying here. It's kind of hard to like pinpoint the frame, but just breaking my heart with that. Like her tears are so real. It's probably because she's crying. Amy Adams famously can make herself cry very well. She can do it about anything to make herself cry. so, so I think something is happening. There's a rift in their relationship, I think. And I think it's also worth pointing out, and since I'm going to analyze this in a real deep way, Giselle is wearing this yellow dress, and we'll see her later on and I think it has mushrooms on it. It's kind of hard to tell, but again, another sort of fairy tale outdoorsy, woodsy kind of thing that a Disney princess would be out, roses, mushrooms, very much nature related. Because Giselle would in the animated world live in a tree house and be amongst nature. And she sings with the birds and the rats and all the creatures of New York City. But in this dress, she will be making a wish to create her her new fairy tale life. So I think what's happening, this is my guess, Giselle Morgan get into some big fight. Giselle's very upset that she can't reach Morgan or talk to Morgan, and she feels like they're drifting apart. And so that's what leads her to make this wish to make everything right with Morgan. So that's what I think is probably happening, but I don't know. That's just my guess.
If this world is not to your liking, then you must change it.
Yeah, so I think the trailer has really set up very well. This is actually kind of a complicated story in a lot of ways, because how do you depict what's happening in such a way that the audience can understand it? I think they've done a really good job in this trailer showing that something has happened. Giselle wants her fairy tale life, but something has happened. And now, not Robert. This is not Robert. This is Edward. Edward is now encouraging her to change it if she can. And so I think, and then after this, we see that Giselle does it and things change. And so I think the editing of this has made this somewhat complicated concept. It made it very easy to understand in the trailer.
I wish.
Yeah, so here she is. Here's Giselle wearing that same yellow dress, and she is making a wish to change her life. So I don't know where she gets this this wand. I'm guessing that evil Maya Rudolph maybe leaves it at the house or something. I don't know. That's a guess. But yeah, it looks like Giselle is in good faith wanting to change things for the better, but is making a mistake here. This is interesting because Giselle, and this is just now hitting me as I go go through this. I had some things prepared that I wanted to talk about. Now I'm thinking new things. But it looks like the magic is coming out of the wishing well, out of the well. And so I like the idea that this is not only playing with the mother-daughter relationship and talking about Giselle as a character and kind of showing what she's going through, but also the idea of wishes in fairy tales. I remember when I used to watch Once Upon a Time a long time ago before it got really bad. It got so bad. I don't know what happened to that show, but it got so bad. But for the first like season and a half, or yeah, for almost 2 seasons, it was pretty good. And one of the things that I remember that the showrunners would talk about with fairy tales is that fairy tales are basically wish fulfillment. And once I heard that, I was like, you know what? That's actually pretty true. If you wish for your life to change, and it does, especially with Cinderella. Cinderella is definitely a wish fulfillment story. And so I think it's really cool that they're m- making that somewhat of a thematic element here, even in just this trailer. I'll be curious how far they take it with the wish, but it seems like Giselle's making a wish and that her wish comes true through a wishing well. So I think that that's really, really clever. I like those kinds of things because it shows that there is a continued thread, a continued theme that's going through all of this. And so everything has changed. Everyone's in fairy tale costumes. This looks awesome. If this was like a Renaissance fair or something, I would go to it. This actually looks really cool. And so there's obviously a new song and dance number that Amy Adams is going to be doing, which I think is great.
I wish.
Yeah, so the wish is coming out of the wishing well, it looks like. So that's pretty cool.
Jumping jelly.
Okay, so Pip comes out of the wishing well. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't notice that before. But I guess maybe this is the entry from the animated world. I don't know. I don't know. That's just my guess.
Wait, how am I talking?
So I'm trying to remember what this sign says. It says something about Monroe-lasia. So I think this new creation that Giselle has made is a combination of Andalasia and this new home of Monroeville, not Monroeville, Monroeville. So all the sets here look great. I'm really impressed with the CGI. I thought it might be cheap since it was going to streaming, but it looks like they put some money into this. And so there is a horse-drawn carriage, kind of like Cinderella. So I don't know if this is a ball that people are going to. I assume there's a ball in this. There's always a ball in these things. But there is a horse-drawn carriage. And so this looks like Giselle is being, I don't know if this is maybe when she turns back into maybe good Giselle, because it kind of seems like the wish takes over Giselle and sort of makes her the wicked stepmother, which makes sense because to Morgan in this scenario, she's not necessarily like I guess she would be a stepmother because Morgan's mother didn't die in Enchanted in 2007. Robert tells Giselle that his wife left. She just left. So I don't think it's a scenario where Robert was a widower. His wife just left them. So I guess in this case, Giselle would be a stepmother to Morgan. I don't know. I'm not great with family trees. But my guess is this is Giselle being taken back over by the magic. They've somehow changed the magic so that Giselle is now going to maybe that evil part of her is going to go away. But the yellow seems to indicate, the yellow sparkly stuff seems to indicate the magic from the wish. So this looks like a pretty powerful moment for the film. So I'm guessing that it's encircling her to change her back into the good-hearted, lovable Giselle that we all know. And I love seeing Robert in fairytale costume. More of this, please. It looks like whatever ball they went to, it got trashed maybe with vines and things. So that's my guess. Okay, let's see. What does that say? Is that a festival of Monroe-lasia? I don't know what that says. It's kind of hard for me to see it. Let's see. I can't make it any fuller screen than that. But so there's a lot of there in the sound design. There's a lot of ticking clocks, a lot of sound design that goes with that. And so it looks like in this shot there's a clock tower in this little square here.
I wish for a fairy tale life, and it's all gone terribly wrong.
Okay, and there's one thing I want to mention here. I think it might happen a couple of times, but in between this joke here where I think it might have gone terribly wrong, and then it Giselle says, or terribly right. There is what's called in the world of editing. There's something called a music stop. So this technique is when you're trying to make a joke or you're trying to make something really intense, you put a sound effect in between something to kind of break up the punchline and the joke, or to make something very dramatic. So it's called a music stop because the music stops. It's pretty simple. So I'm going to back this up. And what you're going to hear is the music's going to go, it's going to get intense, and then Giselle's going to say the line, and then you'll hear a kind of a bell tone. What is that called? A bell something or other. You're going to hear kind of a big low clock tower sort of bell sound, and that's what's called a music stop.
I wished for a fairy tale life and it's all gone terribly wrong. Or terribly right.
Yeah. So if you ever wonder what that's called, from what I understood from being mentored by some editors when I worked at the old Turner Broadcasting, which is not what it's called anymore, but I had some mentoring from some editors there who did things like this, promos and trailers and things. And it was told to me it was called a music stop. So that's what it's called. And so you can hear in this sequence from basically here on out, there's going to be some clock ticking that's going to happen. It's going to drive. I think there's a couple of reasons they're probably doing this, which I think is really cool that it's sort of multi-layered. It's that clock ticking as an editor that's going to drive things. It's going to pace things. It's going to make things more intense. It's like having a heartbeat in your trailer. It's going to make things much more intense to have that clock ticking and maybe getting faster, maybe getting louder, and that will drive the intensity of what's happening. You can see we're almost to the end of the trailer, so for that to come in and really be consistent is very smart. And then, of course, the other reason would be to coincide with the Cinderella aspect of this film and the clock striking midnight and the ball changing. So something is going to happen, I think, at midnight to really drive some intensity in this film. You're going to hear the clock. And so there's a big focus on the clock tower. So there is a clock tower in this big square. There's, I guess that's the third layer of things. There's actually a clock tower.
Stroke.
Oh, and it's almost midnight according to that clock.
The last stroke.
And I love this weird scrolly character. that's pretty fun. I don't know who he is, but I already love him.
Of 12. Nothing will be as it was before.
Stepmother!
Uh-oh.
And we get an uh-oh from Pip. So we know something is wrong, something has changed, and it is not good.
Oh, Giselle, what have you done?
So yeah, so this scene where Giselle pushes Morgan into the wishing well, this is what I like about this trailer. I don't know, I'm probably reading into it too much, but there's, now that we've sort of gone through it, you and I, the viewer, we've talked about the ticking clocks, and we've talked about the wish fulfillment and how the magic comes from the wishing well, and how the wish comes out of it. The wish comes out of the wishing well. And here Giselle is pushing Morgan into the wishing well. So I don't know what that says quite yet about the story about Giselle. And this could be a dream sequence. I don't know. But to push Morgan in would be to shut her out of the wish. So I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that a little more. I'm very curious as where this goes, but I think this plays back into the film focusing on Giselle and Morgan's relationship, because now Morgan is now sort of the princess character who has an evil, wicked stepmother now. So I think this is really getting pretty interesting to me. And so here are these, it looks like the two comedic characters who are, I think, stand-ins for the Wicked Stepsisters. So I think that's pretty cool. So we do get some Snow White stuff in here. I like these ornamental things on this. I guess this is a door or an armoire or something. Sort of looks like an owl. I think that's really interesting. But I'm guessing that Morgan maybe gets pushed into the wishing well and becomes the magic mirror. I'm guessing that is that what is happening. But now Morgan is now in sort of a Snow White situation where she looks like she's become the magic mirror. And yeah, she's Morgan is somehow at the ball. I think that gets trashed, and it looks like things have gone wrong with evil Giselle. She's like strangling Morgan at this point. I don't know what's happening with Nancy here. I guess this is Queen Nancy, maybe. But looks like some of the magic is behind and to the right of her. That yellowish, sparkly stuff. Yeah, so maybe if you get pushed into the well, you get sent back to the animated world. So I guess Edward goes into the well. He's separated from Nancy. Morgan gets pushed into the well. She becomes an animated uh, character, I guess, is the magic mirror. So I guess that's what happens. So when you come out of the wishing well, you're coming into the real world from the animated world. And if you're pushed back into the wishing well, you're now pushed back into the animated world, which I think makes sense. So lots of explosions, dancing at balls, because of course there is. Yeah, so it looks like Morgan comes in. I think this is probably like the big final battle, like the the boss battle that's happening, because this looks like it probably ends at a ball that has a clock strike of 12. Although I don't know, maybe this is sort of the midpoint. They go to a ball, and well, I don't know. I'm curious as to what part of the film this is, because the first Enchanted ended with a ball, and the big fight against the villain was sort of like the ball goes wrong, and then Narissa turns into the dragon at the ball. So my guess is it will play out a little bit the same. But what I think in terms of Morgan wearing the sort of the fairy tale dress, she's now looking more like Giselle. So I'm when I see this film, I'm going to follow Morgan's clothing, her wardrobe, because wardrobe is not an accident. A lot of thought goes into picking out the clothes that the characters will wear. But now here in this ball gown, she is looking a lot like Giselle, especially early Giselle in Enchanted, when she's just come into the real world and she's still got her wedding dress on. So this maybe, I think, if this was me writing it, I think this would be Morgan's way of understanding Giselle a little better. Maybe she has a problem with Giselle for some reason at the beginning of the film. Maybe she doesn't like the way Giselle does things or whatever. I don't know. But maybe this is Morgan's way of understanding uh, Giselle in a new way to experience what it's like to be a fairy tale character and understand where she's coming from. So that's what I would do. I don't know if that's the way it's going to go down, but I think that would be a way to heal Giselle and Morgan's relationship if that's kind of the main focal point of the film, which it seems like it is. The way this trailer portrays it, anyway, it seems like that's kind of the main crux of the film. So I think there's got to be a way you go from having evil Giselle to to then having their relationship fixed at the end. So maybe Morgan is the way to get evil Giselle to come out. I mean, yeah, evil Giselle to come out of Giselle and become good Giselle again. Maybe it's maybe Morgan's love for Giselle will save her. It seems cliche, but I would eat that stuff up. I would eat it up. Okay, so we're almost to the end of the trailer. I'm so excited about this movie. I can't stand it. Okay, so Giselle here looks like maybe she's at the ball. She's got a crown on, which is interesting. I guess she's crowned herself queen of this town now. She looks like she might have a little bit of a high collar, which is an evil villainous piece of wardrobe. And she looks like she has this wand with the magic. So she's wielding the magic here at the end, or whenever this takes place. But she's got the wishing magic coming out of the wand. And since we've been talking about ticking clocks and time, this clock looks like it blows up. It gets destroyed. So what is time anyway? time is all relative, right? So, so I think for me, when I go into this film, I'm going to be looking at a lot of things. I'm going to be looking at Giselle and Morgan's relationship, how that evolves, and then I'm going to be thinking about motifs and themes about time, and maybe maybe the film will beat us over the head with it, and we won't be able to think about it too much. But I would love it if they just sort of used it as visuals and we could kind of connect the dots and have our own interpretations about that. But it does seem that time is very important in this film. Clocks and ticking and counting down are big things. And I'm curious about what the destruction of time might mean for these characters in this story.
That's wicked.
And so you get a little bit of a see, it builds everything builds up, and then the music stops a little bit again. You get another music stop between uh uh to bring in this last joke about
That's wicked.
Wicked good.
so there's a couple of music stops here in this trailer. Let's see.
That's
So I'm trying to see. Yeah, so there's kind of a downbeat that's sort of still carrying the clicking the ticking clock is what I mean, not clicking talk, the ticking clock. The downbeat is still carrying the ticking as we go until it sort of explodes with the clock.
That's wicked.
Wicked good.
And it ends with a reprise of True Love's Kiss from the original Enchanted. So I am much more excited about Disenchanted than I originally was. I thought, who needs a sequel to Enchanted? I loved the first one so much. You can't top it. It was too good. But I think they're doing some really interesting things here, and I'm excited about digging through some of those elements and thinking about the characters and the story and really analyzing what's going on. And honestly, I'm just excited to see these characters again. These are characters that I was really invested in with Enchanted, and I thought they did such a good job in the 2007 film. And so I'm actually kind of excited to see them again and see what they're up to and meet the new baby. What's the new baby's name? I don't know. But I'm curious to see what the family dynamic is like and where they end up. Do they get their fairy tale happy ending? I guess we'll see. But I just wanted to talk about the trailer because I thought it was a really well cut trailer and it was doing a lot of really cool things. And I just wanted to talk about them because I'm really excited about it. So I guess I will follow this video up with an actual analysis of the film when it comes out. So even though this is not DC related, which is basically my brand here on this channel, but Amy Adams is awesome, and I think I want to talk about her performance as Giselle because I love Giselle so much. So I will do that when it comes out in November, and we'll talk more about Disney princesses and fairy tales and wish fulfillment and ticking clocks.